Hi guys, and welcome to episode 2 of All Bases Covered. Today I am at Woodland Waters near Grantham, and it is an absolutely Baltic day. It's 1 degree with a wind chill making it feel about -10, and it is blowing a gale. And conditions like these really do lend themselves to fishing single hook baits, and that's exactly what we're going to be looking at in more detail in this episode. So first of all, what is meant by the term fishing single hook baits or fishing singles? Well, it doesn't mean the amount of baits attached to the rig. So we're not talking about fishing with one boilie rather than a double boilie. What we mean is we are fishing with just one single hook bait with no additional loose feed. So the only bait in the swim is the one attached to the rig. Now, there are a number of different scenarios when fishing with single hook bait is going to be the best approach, but let's take today as a great example. It is a bitterly cold day and the carp are not going to be feeding with a great deal of conviction. So when the carp does decide to have a feed, I want the only thing that goes in their mouth to be my hook bait rather than potentially becoming full up by loose feed items. Also, I'm fishing this lake for the very first time today. I am totally unfamiliar with the lake, its topography, or where the carp may be located, and I've seen no signs of carp since I've been here. So I'm fishing with single hook baits as a means of trying to locate the carp. And I'm doing that by repositioning the rods every hour. Every hour I'm reeling in, recasting to a new spot in an attempt to try and find the carp. And that will happen if I either get a bite or if I start receiving liners, in which case I know the fish is slightly short of where I'm actually fishing, and I can then drop the rig a little bit shorter to where I think the carp may be located. Well, just 10-15 minutes ago I had a recast with the right hand rod, cast it about 15 yards farther than where I have been fishing, and we're playing a fish. And I'm not going to lie, it's come as quite a surprise because it's absolutely freezing right now. The wind's picked up, my hands are numb, my face is numb. I really wasn't expecting to get any sort of action at all today. But we have, and if this goes in the net, I'll be really, really chuffed. And it just goes to show that on days like this, in conditions like these, you don't need to introduce bait. If you can find the fish, just put the right bait in the right place, and that's all that's needed to get a bite. Here he is, here he is. Get in, yes! That's such a surprise. I was not expecting anything today. He'll do nicely. Well, he may not be a monster, but on a bitterly cold day like today, he is still certainly welcome. We've got a common here for around £12, and he came just 10-15 minutes after I repositioned one of the rods. And it just goes to show that fishing single hook baits is a great tactic when they're presented in the right place at the right time. Now, when it comes to the rigs for fishing with single hook baits, I like to keep my rigs as simple as possible. But that's not to say there isn't any thought or consideration gone into their construction. My favourite rig is the Blowback Ring, and I have one here. This is tied using a main boom section of £25 Camotex Soft. Now this is a coated braid, but it's a supple coated braid, but there's just enough stiffness in that coating to push away the critically balanced hook bait so that it falls full distance away from the lead. So it prevents tangles, and it also means that when the fish picks up the hook bait, the rig isn't sat in a coil, it's that maximum distance away from the lead. So when it picks up the hook bait, it's got to move very, very little before it feels the weight of that lead, which then helps improve the hooking properties of the rig. Coming down to the sharp end here, I have a size 5 curve short hook. I do prefer a short shank hook for my fishing, just because they're a lot stronger than a longer shank. It's simple physics, I guess. But what a long shank hook does offer, I think, is better hooking properties. So what I've done, I've artificially increased the shank of the hook here with quite a long length of shrink tube. So what I've got there is a short shank hook, which retains all its strength, but all the hooking properties of a long shank hook. If you come down on the shank there, I've got a small piece of fine hook silicone there just to trap the hair in place, and it also creates a blowback effect. And the hook bait here in this instance is a yellow Northern Special Wafter. Now these are very critically balanced, and when it's lying on the lake bed, it kind of sits around popped up off the hook, so the hook is lying flat and the wafter is essentially anchored down by the weight of the hook. Now the rig I use when fishing over any sort of light debris is pretty much the same. The same components are being used here. We've got the 25 pound Camotex Soft, size 5, curved short hook, again with the shrink tube over the eye. The only real difference here is the inclusion of a split shot, just to critically balance the hook base, and that's pinched on just at the break of the coating, so I've still got a nice hinge and great movement there too. However, if I'm fishing venues where there's more weed present or lots of debris, then I opt to fish my version of the hinge stiff rig. Now the reason I prefer to use this version of the hinge stiff rig over a standard pop-up presentation in weed or heavy debris is this allows me to fish with a high pop-up whilst retaining that stiffness in the hook section. And this is done by incorporating doubled over 30 pound rigidity. It's a very, very stiff material, and in effect what it's doing is creating again an extension of the hook, so it's kind of like fishing with one big hook. And I do believe when it comes to using this rig, the stiffer the better. Then coming up here again, 25 pounds Camotex Soft as the boom section, and this length will vary depending on the depth or the height of the weed I'm fishing in. If I'm fishing over weed which may be a foot or 2 foot off the bottom, then this hook link may be 1 or 2 feet long. So the lead can then sink into that weed and it won't drag the hook link down with it. The hook bait will still be sat wafting around all enticingly on the top of the weed. So those are my 3 rig choices when fishing singles, and all 3 rigs have served me very well over the years. Now the setup I use for the vast majority of my fishing is a simple lead clip setup, and the reason I like it so much is that lead is able to fall into any soft sediment, any debris or light weed, and the hook link is still able to sit on top and not compromise the presentation in any way. Now the only time I really change from a lead clip setup when fishing single hook baits is if I'm fishing venues that have lots of soft, deep silt. And in these situations there's a chance that lead could fall so far into the silt that it starts to drag the hook link down with it. The hook link can start to loop over and the presentation is compromised. So in these situations I would swap over to a helicopter setup. When fishing with singles, it really is important to make your hook bait stand out, to really give the carp something to home in on. And this can be done in 2 ways. It can be done by increasing the visual attraction by using bright fluoro hook baits, or it can be done by increasing the food signals and attractor levels in a bait. Now this can be done by simply adding some liquid flavour to your chosen pop-ups, and it can be done days, weeks or even months in advance. In fact, I like to add a little bit of liquid flavour to my hook baits, and once they have soaked that in, I like to add a little bit more and repeat the process until they are really potent. Now that's preparation that can be done prior to your session, but there's also a means of boosting the food signals whilst you're actually on the bank. Now just before casting out, I like to dip my hook bait, my rig and even the lead setup in a bottle of liquid food. I'm using the Amino Blend 365. It's a lovely creamy smelling liquid and it's a smell that lingers for a very long time, and I think it just provides that extra bit of attraction for any carp in the immediate area to really home in on. Well, it has been a really tough session. It's been bitterly cold, and because of the low temperatures the carp haven't been feeding with any sort of conviction at all. But by casting single hook baits around the swim regularly, I was able to find carp, I was able to get a bite, and I was able to land one. And it just goes to show the effectiveness of fishing single hook baits in conditions like these. So I'm able to leave this session very happy indeed. I'll see you next time when I hope it's a bit warmer.